It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas. Do. Don't do that again.
Hey, you look like you've grown your beard back there again, Jordan.
Yeah, I know. I'm loving it. Aren't you loving this Christmas time?
Hey, it is that festive time. The songs are in the shops. The Christmas movies are coming out by the dozen.
Sugar puff snowflakes.
Yeah, people are going on
candy cane.
vacation, planning for holiday time. It's that time of year again, but I wonder if there's a little bit more to it than fancy hats and
Pavlova.
awesome dance moves.
Tune in just a moment. We're going to talk about Christmas.
Well, Christmas time is the time when people get all festive and do all sorts of fun things, but...
Yeah, there's lots of warm feelings, but you know what? Let's get one thing straight. I think there's something a little bit more to Christmas than all of these fun things that we're wearing here right now.
You're suggesting I should lose the reindeer glasses?
I am not suggesting. I'm pleading with you to take those things off. Let's talk about the Christmas story, Adrian.
Ah, yes, because it certainly doesn't involve Santa Claus, elves, or any form of better be good, better be nice, because Santa Claus is watching you.
Ooh.
Right?
There's some interesting, maybe mistheologies in that concept right there.
Yeah, that's right.
We got to make sure that we are good in order to receive.
Very contrary to the spirit of the actual biblical Christmas story, which is all about how humanity is embraced by the grace and the kindness of God despite our naughtiness, right? Yeah.
I love the theme of the Christmas story is that we see such a clear picture of God stepping off of his throne. It's a clear, decided decision that this world is worth saving. He's investing his entire life, entire gift of heaven poured out in one gift in Jesus to come to our earth.
If ever there was a Christmas gift, that gift is Jesus, right? What more could heaven give? You know, the Creator himself stepping in to this world, adopting creation into his being. The one who's above creation, who is separate from creation, actually taking that into his being to walk the journey with us, experience life on our terms in a broken world, and ultimately, later on, to become the one who steps in our place and shields us from judgment. Like the Christmas story is the beginning and the revelation of the true character of God. It's a profoundly deep story.
I'm so grateful for this story. But Adrian, let's dig into this a little bit more. Maybe let's talk about, you know, often we just have these little pictures of nativity. We got a baby Jesus there, we got Mary, we got Joseph, we got some wise men, we got some shepherds. But maybe let's unpack this a little bit.
Yeah,
where do we want to start?
Those are the characters of the Christmas story, and often we do tend to talk mostly about Jesus because he's the central person in the Christmas story,
front and center.
But there's so much packed into this Christmas story. It's not just a nice little story of farm animals watching the birth of Jesus there in a dirty old manger. I mean, you think about Mary and Joseph, right? They were the parents entrusted with this life of the Messiah. What happened to them? We look at them as the heroes now, and we think, wouldn't it have been great for us to be, played that role or whatever? But I got to tell you, when that angel visited Mary and said, this is what's going to happen, and she said yes to that invitation, this was scandal. This was the end of her reputation. This wasn't a society where a teen pregnancy was okay. This was a society where a betrothed woman who got pregnant by some other means, and we all know how that happens, right, was actually liable to a community sentence of death if you read Deuteronomy 22. So the crazy thing here is that this Christmas story is actually a divine interruption. It turns Mary and Joseph's lives completely upside down, because it's not only Mary who's pregnant, but Joseph either looks like the one who knocked her up, or he looks like the fool who's been taken for a ride because she's been getting around in the neighborhood. Like the Christmas story is full of scandal, of ruined reputations, a divine interruption. Like, this was a major you can't look at it through our perspective on these subjects. It was poof.
And they would have had to have worn that story for the rest of their lives. We see throughout the scriptures in the New Testament where Jesus was referred to as the carpenter, or the carpenter's son, and the son of Mary. There was this subtle implication that, hey, that is that illegitimate boy, and what kind of crazy things is he doing? They've had to wear this this baggage through the rest of their life on earth.
I mean, he certainly can't be the promised Messiah, as you say. He's the illegitimate son with some almost blasphemous story about how God done it.
Yeah. I think that's an interesting thought there. I wonder how often that maybe we can write people off just because of our perceived or what might be a wrong or bad story or bad history, and we could just write people off saying, they're no good.
Yeah. And hey, it doesn't end there. I mean, you think about the wise men. They were outsiders from a faraway land. They were not Jewish people. They came in search of the baby. They faced the ire of Herod, really, who didn't want this baby king to be in his town.
Yeah.
And there's an interesting story in the shepherds, because I guess I read a book. It was a really great book about the Christmas story, and the author pointed out how they followed a 4-step plan. They searched, then they obeyed when the word of the Lord came to them through the angel saying, don't go back to Herod. Then when they found the baby, they bowed, and then they gave. So they searched, they obeyed, they bowed, and they gave. And I think that's the journey that every single one of us needs to be on. We're searching for something better. Will we obey the word of the Lord when it comes? When we realize who Jesus is, will we bow? And then out of that experience, will this generosity of all that God has done and given to us, awaken within us this desire to give ourselves and everything we have, everything we are, back to Him in loyalty.
I really like that, Adrian. I know you mentioned that horrible character in the story, Herod.
Yes.
And how he played out some really awful and evil things in the Christmas story.
Genocide, essentially.
Yes, killed all of the baby boys in Bethlehem from 0 to 2 years old. And this just paints a little window into a picture. I love to compare these two kings. You have King Herod and you've got King Jesus.
The powerful and the almighty.
Yeah. Where you have King Herod there doing whatever he can, clinging to his throne. He's fearful that some little baby's going to grow up and rip his throne away from him. So he's willing to stop at nothing, killing babies, so that he can sit on his throne comfy. And I just love the opposite perspective there of Jesus, that he is willing to die, and the scriptures promise us that one day we will sit on a throne with him. So he's willing to die to give us a throne. Herod's killing everybody so he can sit his little fancy butt there on the throne.
Absolutely. And it's this idea of what we might call in Christian language the great controversy between Christ and Satan. Because really, Herod is playing out the same description of satanic character that we find in Isaiah 14 with this upward trajectory of, I will ascend, I will be amongst the stars, I will take the throne. And then Philippians chapter 2, you have the condescension of Jesus, the stepping down from the throne, the one who was God but wouldn't cling to it, then became a man, then he became a servant of men, then he had to learn obedience, and then eventually he died like man and in the place of man. So you have this contrasting ascension motif for Satan played out through Herod, and the condescension of Jesus to walk the road with us, and you and I, every single one of us, are in that story somewhere, because we're on the continuum of forming a character that either shifts towards the one side or shifts towards the other side in likeness. And the Christmas story is a good pause for us to go, which of these two am I gravitating towards? Because it's one or the other.
Right. So it's that serving of putting our own self on the throne. Are we willing to step off the throne and make Jesus our Lord and King of our lives?
Yeah, absolutely.
Beautiful contrast.
Yeah, it is, hey. And then we have the shepherds, right? The shepherds are the poor in the story. They are out in the fields and no one cares about them. They're just watching their flocks at night, protecting them from animals and thieves, because this is their livelihood, this is their earthly wealth, this is their vocation, and then these angels, again, divine interruption out of nowhere in the midst of the darkness. Good news, good tidings, peace on earth, right? The greatest gift of all, the gift of God incarnate, has been given to this world. And I love how in that moment they're out there to protect everything, but when they get this news that something great has happened, they're like, nothing compares to the value of what this gift is, and they actually leave their livelihoods, leave their flocks exposed at the risk of loss to go find this greatest of gifts of all. And the Christmas story just reminds us, let nothing of this world so hold your attention and your affections that you're not willing to lay it all aside for the sake of grasping this incredible gift that has been given us in the person of Jesus.
Wow, that is so interesting that you have these very wealthy wise men coming and laying themselves before Jesus and worship Him. You have the poorest of poor, or just the middle working class coming before Jesus.
Yeah.
Each of these classes are drawn, compelled to come and to worship this newborn King.
And at the feet of Jesus, there is no status. At the feet of Jesus, there is no rich and poor. At the feet of Jesus, there is no racial inequality. You know, these men from the east versus the chosen Jewish people, the shepherds. At the feet of Jesus, all that stuff melts into nothingness, and the playing field is level as we all bow before this King, you know? Like, it's
awesome.
A statement in a world of Black Lives Matter and Me Too, that at the feet of Jesus is the only place you're actually going to find a right recognition of who we are in relation to one another and who we are in relation to God.
You know, the Bible tells us there, I think it's in Matthew chapter 1, you've got the genealogy of Jesus. And it actually paints us, if you look into the stories behind these names, it says, so-and-so begat so-and-so begat
Like
so.
one of the most boring passages you could read, like, you know, most people switch off there. What's the point of the story, right?
Yeah, name after name, there's 14 generations, then another 14, and it just goes on and on. But if you look into their stories, there's some very interesting, and how the gospel brings some people that should not be in that story, but they're there.
Yeah, by our ways of estimating people's value and worth and all the rest, right? Yeah, absolutely. So Matthew has the genealogy of Joseph, and Luke carries the genealogy of Mary, and it turns out both of them are descendants of King David. And so Jesus has right to the throne through both sides of his family. But you're quite right. I mean, you think of who's in that family tree. Abraham, the great man of faith who lied and took matters into his own hands when he saw Pharaoh as a threat over the beauty of Abraham's wife, you know. You have David. Well, we don't need to say much about him. This is a guy who committed adultery, and by our standards today would actually be worse. As king, with the imbalance of power between him and Bathsheba, it would actually be considered power rape.
That's right.
Right? He commits first degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder by having her husband executed to try and hide the fact that she's pregnant. Like, this is David, the mighty king, you know? Like, he was a bit of a mess. It led to the destruction of his kingdom. There's a whole lot of women in the genealogy that are specifically mentioned. And they are sometimes Gentiles, like Ruth the Moabitess, the woman from Moab, the sworn enemies of Israel.
That's
right? You've got Rahab, the prostitute. You know, you've got Tamar, the seductress. The man in that story, Judah, wants to have her killed, so he's in the line of Jesus. Tamar is in the line of Jesus. Like this family was a mess. The historical family of Jesus, it was a mess.
So I really like that thought there, because the Christmas story really embraces the most messed up families that this planet has.
Yes.
And nobody has gone too far. Nobody has walked such a dark road that they can't come and welcome and worship the newborn King.
Absolutely. You're an outsider, it doesn't matter. Whatever other people say about you, it doesn't matter. However far you think you've fallen, it doesn't matter. You know, however big a mess your life is in or your family is in, it doesn't actually matter. You have these themes of the struggle of character development. You have this theme of the great controversy. You have this idea of how the Christmas story holds in one hand the hope that is offered through Jesus and the brokenness of this world. You know, the babies that are killed in Bethlehem and the weeping and the wailing that happens. Like, the Christmas story tells us why this world is a mess and what God is doing to bring it out of that mess. You know, so you don't have the rosy tinted color glasses with eternal optimism. You also have a realistic picture of this world and the mess it's in. Like, the Christmas story is so deep, it's so rich, it's so varied. When you look at all of these things in comparison, it's not just away in a manger, no crib for a bed. You know, it's profound, the Christmas story, and it brings all of us into it. Like, where are you in this Christmas story that's still unfolding in our world today?
So this Christmas, as you're sitting around with friends, with family, maybe you're working those double shifts and overtimes too, and you might be feeling the burdens and the stresses that sometimes Christmas brings. Let's remember the true story of Christmas. Let's remember the true newborn King and how you too can invite him into your life and that you can have peace on earth, just as those angels promised there.
Hallelujah.
Peace in our lives.
Yeah,
I love the
absolutely.
Christmas story for
Love
that.
it. Merry Christmas, and thank you for joining us on the couch today.